to me, it's sort of like what we're saying is that limiting abortion should then control and limit the behavior of promiscuity or a consenting
Well,
sex or one night stands. And that's sort of like, where's the man in this, right? Like, what if they didn't even get numbers? How's she going to tell him? And also, that's his responsibility to use
No,
condoms at that point
and
too.
absolutely. But here's my thing is like I could commit a crime. I
Mm-hmm.
could write fraud checks over and over.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually,
Yeah.
I'm gonna end up in jail doing time. See,
Mm-hmm.
you know, like I don't like I under, there's exceptions
Where's the
to the abortions and
where's the
stuff like.
crime here?
Huh? No. This is
Where's
what
the
I'm saying.
crime?
The crime I'm saying, as far as no, as far as religious
Yeah,
wise
there's
and death and killing,
there you
that's
go.
what I'm talking
Okay.
about. As far as you make a mistake, like, my thing,
did you catch that real quick? She was
yo,
like
what's the
on
crime?
that quick.
We know your time with us is valuable. So now
Thank
you're
you.
here. Please introduce yourself to those that are listening that probably don't know who you are.
Yeah, I'm thinking most people don't know who I am.
Of course they do. That listen to the show. Yeah.
Well, hopefully, yes.
Yeah.
Right, except for all the Bro-RantZ crew, of course.
Exactly.
But hi, everybody. My name is Puja Parikh. I'm a licensed psychotherapist and behavior analyst out in New York, New Jersey. So I've, I know, been contributing on the show for a little bit on a lot
Hmm.
of the mental health topics, and here I am today again. Thanks for having me back, and my apologies for last week.
No, you don't need to apologize for that. Jeff, you want to say something?
No, I was just gonna say it's always good to have PTP on. Bro-RantZ family know you as PTP. Infamous
That's
Ray
right.
coming through.
Yes,
Um,
it's always a pleasure to have you on here, PTP.
that's right.
Puja.
That's right.
Thank you.
Yes, because you
I,
always
I,
have a lot
I
to add all the
Really
time.
do perspective. You know.
thank
And
you.
like you
Thank
said
you.
before, you helped us through a tough time that we had here before as far as communication because you were able to see things that we couldn't see and you gave us some good tips. So that's why we have you on here.
Anybody interested
Well,
in that?
great.
Just go back a couple episodes. You find it.
Yeah, exactly. Just a few episodes.
Yes.
That's if it's still out
Yeah.
there. So, Pooja.
That conversation.
Yeah, exactly. So what are your thoughts on the Roe versus Wade overturn? I mean, you're a woman, so it's good to actually
Hmm.
have you on. We didn't have that. We were just guys that were trying to have empathy for having spouses or
Hmm.
daughters. But what is your take on it? How do you feel? Do you feel like it's? Do you feel, betrayed? Do you feel like you're going backwards?
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
and you know what? To add some context to that, I'm not too sure if they'll align or not. But if maybe you have one feeling about it from the viewpoint of female versus that of
Hmm.
your profession, I'd also be curious about that connection as well. So sorry, Rich, I just wanted to
Yeah.
kick in
Oh
on
no,
that.
no,
Yeah,
you're right.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. So, yeah, I'm sure you guys kind of went over the whole sort of background for Roe versus Wade, and I think it was the Supreme Court passed it in 1972, um, and it was basically when it was passed, we saw, I mean, I think historically, and this has all been documented, a lot of progress in terms of less, um, women trying to get illegal or back alley abortions, which are extremely dangerous, or trying to abort themselves using various medications or herbal remedies, which can
Hmm.
be dangerous and harmful to their health. And so, I think the whole idea for me, given I think for me, the idea that with so much going on, just not that long ago, it was about, guns and our right to have these guns. And
Hmm.
so many children, little children in schools were shot. And we it just baffles my mind that conversation is, if life is so precious, right? Why aren't we doing something? Why are guns still out there, but abortion is now illegal? How is this a threat? To civilization. I'm not sure why this is always where I think um, the law or legal uh, political lines are always drawn. I
Hmm.
feel like this is a healthcare issue. It's between a woman and her significant other if they are having the baby together and they need to make a choice, and it does impact men as well. So I think the fact that we're trying to control that is extremely disconcerting, because we have countries like China which have one child policies. So it now we're trying to do the opposite here, which is you can't, now you can't have abortion. Well, so what's next? You can't create life through IVF for couples who may be struggling to have children, because according to pro-life, forgive if any of my words or terms are not politically correct here, but I think for a lot of people who are pro-choice, they believe that life begins at conception. And I'm sure you guys have religion plays into this, cultural context, all of it. But when people are struggling with fertility and they use IVF is often where the egg is extracted from the female partner or woman, and then the sperm is taken from the male sample or donor, if somebody's trying to do this with a donor, and it's the embryo itself is created in under laboratory conditions. So if that's the beginning of life, according to legislatures, or for pro-choice arguments, well, then what's next? Are you going to ban what people can do in terms of fertility treatments for those who can't have kids, or those who do have embryos? What can you not donate them to science? Or sometimes the option is you can donate them to others if they're struggling to have their own children, or it sounds horrible, medical language on the forms will say you can discard your embryos. But my point being that I think that this whole thing around restrictions on this is such a definitive action, whereas there's so many other things I think that take priority. But this is just sort of like, to me, I'm processing it as, I can't believe like people are concerned legally. This is what we're dealing with when there's war. There's gun violence is increasing for lots of reasons. There's formula shortage for babies, foremost, or was until recently, I think. So there's inflation, there's recession, and yet instead of addressing all these larger, I think, environmental, ecological issues, we're focusing on a woman's right to choose whether she can get an abortion or not. While at the same time, here's what happens. Anytime you have restriction, what happens? People end up, like they did prohibition in the 20s with alcohol. People still had alcohol. It just became unsafe, and a crime, right? Just with abortions before they were legalized. Women, like, I don't know if you've heard the term coat hanger abortions or back alley, and it's incredibly unsafe. It's a health issue, and in some states they're going as far as they're saying they want to ban it even in the case of an emergency or a threat to the mother's life, which to me is, how could you say you value life but you don't value the life that's there, nurturing and ready to give that new life? It's just, I think, one of those situations where I, as a woman, see it as just an unnecessary restriction and not something that we need to deal with. It is a healthcare matter. It should be between a healthcare provider and the woman and her partner. If ultimately, though, I do believe, and I don't know if this is maybe where there might be some other opinions, but I do think it ultimately comes down to a woman's choice to, her right to choose, like whether or not, despite what the partner may want in the situation, I think it is up to a woman to decide whether or not she would like to go through with the pregnancy, because it is a significant commitment on several levels, emotionally, physically, for a woman, trying to at least be in a place where you can, if you're struggling, let's say you're working, as soon as you get pregnant, a lot of places will start to notice that. And women have had issues where they're lose hours, or they get replaced slowly while they're on maternity. Maternity leave is another thing that's an issue. So these things impact, economically too, which is another factor. So I think for a woman, I don't think it's an easy decision whether someone chooses to have an abortion or not. I just think that it is a personal choice and it should be treated as such. And I think that if, somebody is pregnant and they would like to, for any reason, there shouldn't really have to be one. If they thought it out and they've come to a conclusion that this is what they want, I believe in this country, in the United States of America, 2022, we should have the right to go and safely get that treatment, whatever it is, whatever you need for that, because it is, I believe, a fundamental right. And in terms of the male perspective, it is a commitment too. I mean, there is, if you're not financially stable, it takes extensive commitment. Obviously, I'm sure you guys have kids, I know, or I'm sure no kids, and it's financially, it's a significant commitment, time, emotionally. It's something you have to be ready and committed to. And I think in the field of psychology and just in the world of mental health, there is more, there's research that documents that there's more harm that's done if you prevent access to services like this. And it actually adversely affects a lot of, people of color, low income families who you otherwise honestly have no means to fly to another state, maybe to get, a treatment that should be allowed in their state. And it's going to just put a lot of other, I think, fertility rights on as fair game now, in my opinion. But there is more harm to force someone to have a child. That just doesn't sound right, because how do you force someone to have a child that they're saying I'm not ready to have, and now when this child is older, they might need a lot more significant resources themselves, because if the attachment with the parents weren't ready, or they were too young, what have you, there's actually damage from that, or just further challenges. And now the same, I think, people that might say we're pro-choice are also against supporting programs that might benefit children that would need it, and most of those children are going to come from either very young unwed parents, or just people who just maybe have kids and don't want to have more and can't afford to. So financially, you have overwhelmed people. You cannot take care of others if you're not taking care of yourself. And I think that it's just wrong to force someone to have a child if they are saying I'm not ready, and
Like I don't mean to cut you off, but when you
but
said
no,
that, you said it
please.
a couple of times. Because my thought is it's the Roe versus Wade being overturned. It's and we talked about this
Hmm.
on the show. Is you mentioned how men you can't force a person to have a child, and that's the thing that's been put on men, because you say they both have, it's between the couple, but
Hmm.
when it boils down to it, the woman has more rights than the man when it comes to that, because it's her body. But the man can't say like, hey, I want to keep this child. You have the child and give me the child and sign over all rights, which I think, as far as we were trying to talk about reform or anything, I think there's ways that if there's two people involved, and let's say, okay, they both don't want the child, then there's that route. But if they say one of them wants the child and wants the commitment, I think it's okay for, something to be in place, like, okay, the woman has it.
Yeah.
You help support the woman while she's going to the doctor and so on and so forth, if she doesn't want anything to do with the child, because it's almost like, it's almost like an adoption, but it's your child, giving the man the rights. Because a
Yeah.
lot of people think the man, they may have a child with someone and not want the kid because they didn't, they're not going to carry the child for 9 months, not figuring that emotionally, years down the line, they're going to be thinking, I'm 50 years old.
Yeah.
I could have had a 20-year-old. I could, I could have had
Oh,
grandkids when I'm
absolutely.
60. So
Yeah.
what are your thoughts on that? Like, do you think there's any
Yeah.
place for reform that a man could get, you know, the, uh,
Yeah.
the custody of a child that's unborn?
That's a really good point, and I have thought of that in terms of, yeah, this impacts men too. It's not just a women's issue, because let's say now in your scenario, if you have two people who are in a relationship
Yeah.
or dating or what have you, and they realize they're pregnant, and maybe the female partner doesn't want to have the child, and from what I'm hearing, you're saying, so what in this situation could you do if the male partner is saying, yeah,
Yeah.
well, you can have the child, and then I'll support you through it. So it's sort of like a surrogacy situation, right?
Sounds
Where
like,
you're kind of not expecting, you're saying um, that she would carry to term and then terminate her parental rights and hand over the baby. Now, my question in this would be,
Yeah.
I don't know how you, because there's a few things that could happen. So what happens, because this does happen often in his,
Yeah.
I don't know how much here, I don't have any stats, but I have heard anecdotally or in other countries where people go for surrogacy. If the child is born with a disability, or let's say the child is born and they're like, oh, that doesn't look like my child, like I'm this contract is null and void, or there's a severe disability, and what then, does that
Well,
contract
they'll
still get enforced?
no, because there's DNA tests. They do that to men all the time. So there's DNA tests and there's parental, paternity tests that would
Right.
take care of that. But no, I don't think it goes null and void. And if you're a parent, if you're wanting to be a parent and you don't want a child that's because they have a disability, then yeah, you have no right to be a parent. I mean, obviously, uh,
But like,
if you want,
right, it's great to say that, right? But
yeah,
in reality, right, we don't know until we're in those shoes. And the sad part is that this does happen, or it just gets too overwhelming, and one partner might say, forget it, I'm out. Like, I can't deal with this. So many divorces occur in situations with special needs kids, or just one situation I've seen a lot also in my practice, where maybe one person's ready to have a child, the other's not, and that's often an issue.
yeah,
That's pretty.
That's
That's
Or
good
pretty
point
or the
common.
too.
opposite,
Yeah.
yeah,
That's pretty
yeah,
common.
or a situation where you mentioned, right, like they maybe the woman wasn't fully on board, but they were trying to start a family, and it happened, and then it became sort of something that was being considered because potential health issues, but also just, I think, emotionally. Of course, not everybody's the same, but I think I just don't know how you could. I mean, being a woman, having been pregnant, having been
yeah,
through, pregnancy, labor, delivery, postpartum, having a child, I have found it to be the most fulfilling. I mean, I would say that is the biggest accomplishment that I can say in my life that I have, and it was a blessing for us. And he's our only one, and so I think certainly have a pleasant experience with that. But I also was much older, different circumstances. I had the support that I needed, and it was extremely tough. I mean, if you don't have any help, you're 16, let's assume, and let's say the boyfriend is 17, 18. Do we realistically think he's going to have the money to raise a child, or the sacrifice of not going to college, for
Right.
example, or getting a job is then a financial opportunity which will hold him back, therefore hold back the finances. What um, and it's not to say that you should be financially set to have children, of course not, but I'm just saying that in situations where if one partner is the one having the child and their concerns maybe, I don't know, like, can we raise a child, or I want to, go to college, and you were going to go here, and what's going to happen to that?
yeah.
Then it just will continue to be the cycle. That it just becomes a really difficult thing to break. I don't know. I don't know if there's reform for that. I know that they are reversing in some states where both parents of an underage child or female that goes in for an abortion has to be notified now.
Yeah.
Before, they had taken that off to prevent, issues, but because it's considered a pretty personal decision at 16, most states are, if you're 16 and it's not statutory rape under circumstances or
Yeah.
anything where you conceived, it's your right to choose without telling your parents. And I think some states have reversed that. Um, but then that's the other thing with the Plan B. I mean, that contraceptive was the one that you can take the pill after, I think, oh gosh,
Mhm.
72 hours, I think, within something like that,
Yeah.
of
Something quick.
unprotected sex to prevent pregnancy. That
Mhm.
used to require prescription. Now, the last, I don't know how long, but the last, I want to say at least a decade, maybe a little less, it's
Mhm.
been available over the counter.
Yeah.
So now, does that also, can that also be taken away? Therefore, preventing means to actually prevent a conception or pregnancy from happening. Um,
Puja.
it just, going off topic, there's so much here.
No, you're
So,
good.
so Reggie also has some other good devil advocate questions as well. Like you just had the one about if the man wants to keep the child, but the woman didn't. He also had another good question where he thought up as far as let's say for instance, like a woman came into like she had an abortion and she had another abortion. Should there be a limit
Yeah.
on the amount of abortions she had? What are your
Exactly.
thoughts on that?
Wow. I mean, should there be a limit on how many kids someone can have?
Yeah, at the end of the day, I mean, if someone, like I said, at some point, let's say if you have 8 abortions, at some point you're gonna have to start taking responsibility or protect it, or you know, cautionary
Yeah.
steps to prevent things like that from happening. Because at the end of the day,
Yeah.
you're thinking someone's gonna make up for your mistake. You're like, oh, don't worry, this is fixed. And I don't know how do you does that make you a
Yeah.
sociopath, or someone,
Oh, geez.
because no, I'm just saying essentially you're just
Yeah.
wiping
Yeah.
away, and it's like, oh, this is my how many children are gonna have 8, and you just keep going to the
Yeah.
clinic and it's all good.
These are just questions
Now,
Yeah,
no, I think they're great questions.
yeah, because they got to be
So are
considered
we talking
in
about?
this conversation.
Yeah, yeah, no, and I think they're really good points to bring up. And I want to clarify. Are you talking about a woman getting 8 abortions? So is the boyfriend or male partner or partners held accountable because
We
they could
also
use a
brought that up
condom,
too.
they could
Should a
use
man get snipped
different
as well?
precautions.
So, yeah, that was also
Yeah,
yeah, but I don't think you're talking about one person. Well, the way I was phrasing it, I wasn't looking for like it being someone that's in
like a form of birth control. You're saying so yours is
yes.
different than like someone using abortion as a form of birth control.
Exactly, like we
Okay.
were basically the way I stated, like you're up in the club, and then hey, you have a one night stand and or whatever, a fling, and then all of a sudden you're back at the club. Come after you've had your procedure, and you keep doing the
Hmm.
same thing over and over. It's not like you're in a relationship, you're in a marriage. That's
Hmm.
different.
Well, let me ask you this: if that person couldn't get an abortion, do you think their behavior would change in terms of going out, living the lifestyle that they're living, or do you think it would, I don't know, would it prevent them from, I think, just going back out there and getting pregnant again after having one? Perhaps, having a child in foster care or end up in on um, for adoption. I mean, this doesn't it, to me. It's sort of like what we're saying is that limiting abortion should then control and limit the behavior of promiscuity or a consenting
Well,
sex or one night stands. And that's sort of like where's the man in this, right? Like, what if they didn't even get numbers? How's she going to tell him? And also, that's his responsibility to use
No,
condoms at that point
and
too.
absolutely. But here's my thing is like I could commit a crime. I
Mm-hmm.
could write fraud checks over and over.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually,
Yeah.
I'm gonna end up in jail doing time. So
Mm-hmm.
like I don't like there's exceptions
Where's the
to the abortions and
where's the
stuff like,
crime here?
huh? No. This is
Where's
what
the
I'm saying.
crime?
The crime I'm saying as far as no, as far as religious
Yeah,
wise
yeah.
and death and killing,
There you go.
that's what I'm talking about.
Okay.
As far as you make a mistake, like,
did you catch that real quick? She
yo,
was
what's
like
the
on
crime?
that quick.
Right.
No,
bro.
no. But I'm saying what I'm talking about as far as the mistake. My thing is this: the
Yeah.
oops, and then your bailout is, oh, I can go here and take care of that. But I'm saying over and over again, like it's almost like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
we're saying like, hey,
Yeah.
we it's we're forgetting like the core of it. Like this is between you and this person. Like you said, both of you had the opportunity to one
Yeah.
use the protection or birth control pills or whatever the case may be, right? And
Sure.
okay, an accident happened. Okay, but if the accident continues to happen because hey, I thought it was gonna be bad the first time. Oh, the third time it was,
Yeah.
trust me, girl, you just keep doing it. So eventually you don't feel it. Then we're excusing what's really taking place, which is
Mm.
the act. Now I'm not talking about the act of abortion, but the act that you keep doing something that's irresponsible over and over because you have a bailout. Meanwhile, like I said, I can't
Mm.
write a fake check because I can't pay my bill and hope to God that, the credit card company or something's not going to come knocking on my door, call the police because I'm committing fraud.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So
No,
not the crime, but I'm
I
just saying
hear that.
making you excusing them for their irresponsibility.
For the bad decision.
Yeah, over
For
and
what?
over again.
Or they're not being prepared for the repercussions of the decisions
Yeah.
that they make or their actions. I guess is what you're trying to say.
So
Right?
the
Yeah.
thing is, Pooja,
Yeah.
it's crazy because
Yeah.
you really should go back and listen to our last show because
Yeah. Yeah.
we covered all kinds of things. But
Yeah.
No,
not
this is
The
interesting.
callers had a
oh,
great.
the callers.
The
Have,
callers had great responses for you.
you got to go back. We got to do a follow up show on that. But
We have two today
Yes,
for you.
I would love to.
I think for me, and again, I'm not a female, right? So when I look at this,
I hope not.
you hit on a couple of things, right? Which is there's so much happening right now. There's
Georgina.
war, there's inflation, there's homelessness. There are people that's
Yeah.
still starving in this country, which is crazy. There's all these recent gun incidents, and so this is the thing that we're focused on. Like this is supposed to help us take a step forward, and it's kind of like if we're really talking about the value of life, this is where we choose to start. Questionable, but that's open for debate. Where I take, I guess, issue with it is it's fine to seek accountability. It's fine to look for some form of consequence, but at what cost? And like you said, is that the fix? It's not necessarily the fix, right? It ultimately, feel like you are now driving people into a corner, and history has shown anytime you drive people into a corner, more times than not, good things do not. And the thing is, it's not just for those people, but everyone in general, good things usually do not come from that, right?
Yeah.
And so it's one
No.
thing to say, like, well, this is how we feel, and we feel like there's got to be consequences and there has to be accountability. But then you just kind of leave off from that, and there's no follow up as to how what the infrastructure that you're going to put in place or strengthen to help these individuals that no longer have the
Right.
choice. And that's what's upsetting to me. It's
Right.
like, okay, clearly everyone feels very strongly about this, regardless of what side of the aisle you're on. And I love the passion coming from both directions.
Both
But
sides. Yeah, we need that.
what's bothersome is to say, well, this is what it is, this is how we feel, and then you kind of take a hands-off approach and let the cards fall where they fall. Like somehow that's going to be
Yeah.
the magic fix, and it just isn't. There's like there appears to be no like form of follow-up, and that's just like really vexing.
Right. And I think the federal court ruled, but now states their judges can, it's up to them now, I think, to
Right.
Yeah.
enforce or not. So it's a very up in the air kind of a thing. And to me, it is a form of, healthcare. I mean, why isn't like, let me ask you this, right? If we're going to talk biology, let me put this out there. We're talking, biologically, physiologically, if a male and a female have sex and they have conception, right? So if we're saying it's a natural thing that can occur because, right, attraction is natural, they have sex, it just sort of happens,
Yeah.
you know, get pregnant. Now, why isn't there an issue with prescribing Viagra? Because then technically, right, like if you're not able to physically have an erection to have sex, maybe your biological clock is saying it's done, grandpa, like stop. And
Mm-hmm.
but they're not. So, that's not an issue. Women or men aren't being encouraged to have vasectomies, which, by the way, are reversible. Tubal ligations, where women get their tubes tied if they don't want to have children, or after a certain amount of kids, they're like, we're done. Those are not reversible should they change their mind. So there's so much to kind of look at, if you're a single man and you don't want to so have kids young, there are options. I'm not saying go get a vasectomy. I'm just saying those are also reversible, right? If you're older, if we're talking biology and this is sort of a natural thing, like it is based, it's every religion, every culture has some sort of written rule somewhere about this, I believe, right? So it's interesting, right? And there's pills for men to continue to enjoy having sex because they can still continue to procreate, right? Men can, you guys can until you're like, God, what, 70 beyond?
Yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
it, but so it's sort of like there's no concern or talk of that, yet there is this is really ties in, I think, to just controlling women and their behavior and their outcomes, because it goes really well to your point of, what if somebody's, going out a lot and then just sort of not able to, let's say they have an issue or mental health disorder, history of trauma, right? A lot of what you mentioned does occur with men or women. Promiscuity often is a sign that there's a lot of childhood sexual trauma history potentially. It could be that they, have an impulse control disorder like ADHD, where they just, it's they're just not able to learn. It is a neurological condition, and you don't always learn from those sort of direct consequences. So also, is that the lesson we wanted? Is that child deserve to be born as a lesson? Because oops, like mom decided to go and have fun and exercise her right to do so, and then also exercise her right to go have access to a safe and adequate procedure, regardless of how you feel, right? Yes, 8 is a lot, but I've also worked with families where they've literally named a child after the number that they held in the position, because that's how many kids there were, and there were multiple partners involved. It was just not a good situation. So, when I think of it, I'm thinking now this person had the option, but of course they just continue to for their personal reasons. I can't sit there and judge, but I do have to think, there are also, for some people, not everybody, social programs that encourage the more kids you have, the more with special needs, the higher your disability income per child comes in. So some people have multiple children, and that if they have disabilities, they get money. And I have in my career come across people that also do that. Or look at that. I don't remember their name. The Mormon family that had like the 20 some kids.
The Duggars,
Yes,
the Duggars.
yes. And then they went on to go for IVF when they couldn't naturally conceive after number 22. I don't know, but it's just sort of like they also did it for publicity. At some point, it was I think their way of life. But at some point, the show
had
gave
to
them
go on.
more right.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like what is we're gonna have these children. So do you think for that case, that example, if want to give her a name or an initial, so it makes it easier to discuss, should we just say L or S, whatever,
okay,
or
L.
woman, a W, whatever. So L goes out, right, and she's pregnant, gets an abortion, happens again. I mean, what do you think would happen if L had the baby? Like, what do you think I'm just curious to know what you think the course would be if she didn't have access to abortion.
Okay, didn't have access to abortion. She's done it several times now, and she's had abortions, and now she doesn't have it anymore. Does L have a mental issue? Like, does she have a mental disorder, like you were saying, or like, are we talking about someone that's healthy mentally, or we're talking about somebody that does have mental issues?
Well, let me ask you, if it's a guy who's having
impulsive?
sex if it's a man who's having sex every time he goes out every night with a different woman, are we asking if he has a mental health issue?
No.
Or are we
The reason
saying,
I
"Good
mentioned
job,
that is
dude"?
because the topic. No. The reason I mentioned, because you did mention that. That's the reason I'm bringing it up.
Yeah.
I'm like, are we talking someone that's
fair?
That's
But
why.
regardless, the most vulnerable
let's just say
the
she's
most vulnerable are
healthy.
people with.
Let's just say she's healthy.
Well, she's healthy. Okay, all right.
She's
So
not-
she's
no
healthy,
mental problem.
and she's saying she doesn't have any.
No mental problem.
So
mental
now she
health
cannot.
issues,
Now she
disorders,
now she
neurological
can't get rid of
conditions.
the child. You're saying
She has the baby.
she has the baby. So
Right.
what happens? So what's the problem? You're saying?
What's going to
So
happen
you're
to
saying
the
after
baby?
8, like she's gone 8 times, should there be?
Well, she's a
like,
healthy
some
person.
restriction?
She's healthy, and you said she didn't have any mental issues. She has a child, and she has a child with
But-
whomever she's with.
I have to say though, in that situation, do we know who the partner is? You guys said it was random hookup, right? So like, how do you even, like, some people, this has happened, and I'm sure you guys have your own stories or from friends, like people have hooked up in clubs, they don't know the person's name or their last name,
JT
or
never has.
so that is, I mean, at least I personally know people and professionally, and this has occurred. And so at that point, like, who are they, like, should now that person, it doesn't matter, right? Because they could have been doing this whole time, knocked up 20 women. They don't even know.
But here's
like,
here's the other thing that we're talking about too. So Ray made a great point last show, which they make having abortion so affordable, and they don't make adopting children affordable. That it's easy accessible. It's harder. You have to jump through hoops to adopt children.
You have to wait years, and the cost is. You have to
it's
be
awful.
You have to
It's
be
ridiculous.
rich. You got to be rich.
Yeah,
or
so
have a great support system.
Exactly. So there's barren women and there's barren men in this world. So not everyone's made to be a parent, but the child you have, I know there's foster care stuff, but there is maybe someone that wants that child, and again, we are. Maybe that person practices safe sex because we're thinking about the child and abortion. Like we're forgetting about the sexual transmitted disease, which is crazy. Like, you know what I mean? That we run to these things now. The most important thing in the last couple of years has been COVID. You got COVID. Nobody asks if you have a sexual transmitted disease anymore. So it's just funny how the topic is this, but we're not talking about what's the underlying. Okay, there's so many other diseases besides, HIV. The virus, AIDS, so maybe they practice safe sex. Maybe, maybe they, to me, it's like everything I've gone through in life, I've had to learn. So if you're not learning from,
on that thought though,
yeah,
it's 8:10 right now. Puja, can we have you listen to one caller and you respond on that after you finish this thought?
Absolutely. Do you need to, is 8:30 good? I can.
No, you're good. We don't want to stop you.
Yeah, we don't want to hold you up. We know if you had a long day.
Oh,
as well.
no.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right,
I could definitely hop on till,
You
it's
listen-
8:30.
listen
I just
to-
have web thing at 9, but
Gotcha.
Okay.
All right.
it's been insane.
No, you're good. So, thank you.
Yeah.
But no, I'm just saying.
But noodling on that though, I didn't hear an answer. What do you think what happened? Because mentally fit or healthy or not.
Well, I'm just saying, like, for instance, you've had to deal with adversity. You've had to deal with adversity. Like I said, when you're talking about children or whatever and having a child, like you had to grow up and take responsibility regardless if it was your decision or not as a man.
Not everybody does though.
No. I'm saying regardless. I'm saying regardless.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Right.
like,
Or from
for
your
instance, because
perspective,
there's laws
right?
and everything, huh? I'm sorry.
But a child doesn't.
Sorry.
A child doesn't constitute growth. I mean, I know several individuals that have multiple kids, and I don't know if I've seen personally any real growth in those individuals for the last decade. So I hear what you're saying. Like, okay, so she, L has gone down this road 8 times. All right, time number 9. Now you have to have the kid. Okay, so L has the kid.
Yeah.
Where's the fix? Because more than likely that kid is now dealing with the consequences of someone who clearly isn't taking accountability for their actions, who's possibly still out doing the same things that they were doing before. And now you've got a neglected kid who grows up to become reliant on a system. Who knows what avenue that takes them down. So I guess ultimately there is no happy ending at the end of this.
Not necessarily. There's a lot of people that have had a bad childhood that have changed, that have had have had great success. Yeah. This is the land of America. That's all we talk about. That's our
Agreed,
that's our picket
but
fence.
But it's not equitable for all, though.
Oh no, not absolutely.
Not equitable.
But I'm pretty sure if we were to average that out, there's probably more negative that comes from that situation than positive, because ultimately your environment has a huge influence, and it takes a certain kind of someone to overcome those challenges, to look beyond, the circumstances that life has dealt them. I'm not saying people aren't capable of it. Baby. I'm just saying that's a hard gamble.
Yeah, I know. It's exactly. I was like, yeah.
No, I mean, but to speak to your point, I absolutely agree, because there's just, you are just gonna. This is also not just like it's a community issue too, right? It's a society. You're gonna have people, again, like you said, growing up, who knows what other trauma and mental health issues they're going to have, and then what they're going to take out into the world because of their life that they unfortunately were born into. And then now you're also looking at taxpayer money that's going to be used for disability or welfare or whatnot, other social welfare services, Medicaid or free medical health. All of that is going to affect on a larger level. I mean, if we're talking politically, then fiscally, the same states that want to support pro-choice don't want to support the same programs that are going to help these parents who, regardless of what situation this child is born into, they don't want to support programs to help the child down the line. So you're going to have more and more racial inequity, more and more lower income people that are going to get impacted. I mean, look at it this way, right? Like, they did this, and I'll stop with this, and I'll go into the question. But
Mm-hmm.
when you remember the whole, there was this epidemic with, like, HIV and AIDS, and they had sort of found it to reusing needles for heroin. There's a whole
Yeah.
heroin epidemic. Was it? I want to say the 80s.
Mhm.
Yeah, it was.
And they traced it back, and they realized that a lot of people were using heroin and sharing needles.
Yeah.
So they founded this very controversial, to this day, I think, for some people, the harm reduction method, where it's like, all right, people aren't going to stop doing what they're doing because people morally think it's wrong, or other people are going to judge them. It just, behavior doesn't necessarily work that way, because it doesn't. So what they did is they were like, well, this is a highly addictive substance. They're going to keep doing it. So they decided to do some sort of a clean needle exchange program to reduce the harm. And that seemed to make an impact, and rates went down, because now people could at least get clean needles. It's not that they're going to stop, because I think, with substances like that, it's similar to sex. Like, people are going to have sex. It is a natural activity. And unfortunately, no contraception, whether you're on it or not, is 100%. But what this also means is that contraception is now fair game, right? Are you going to remove the pills that can prevent it? Now, are condoms going to require some kind of special, because that also prevents life? Where do we stop? Is it, a lot of concerns lately in the news is people are now experiencing stress when they're thinking of those who are having fertility challenges, and they're like, what do we do if they start to now consider our embryos? We can't do what we need with them, or what have you. So there is a lot that's opening up there. But I think having my son was the easiest part. What comes next is harder.
Yeah.
So that's all I gotta
Absolutely.
say. You can't make someone have a kid. Nobody knows.
No, absolutely.
There.
But like you were saying, to touch on what you were saying, as far as pose the same question to you, like you were saying, like, so
Yeah.
let's say Elle has 8 abortions. Has Elle made up her mind she doesn't want a child? So should she get her stuff snipped, or her, you know what I mean? Like, should they make it accessible for her, affordable, if she wants to go that route? Do you think that's a better option?
Yeah, I mean, I think Elle would need to have a big talk after probably the first, second, just
Yeah,
in terms
exactly.
of, do you have contraception available, right? Like, because some people, right? Like, I know many religions, they practice the rhythm method for contraception, which is scientifically not that reliable if you're trying to prevent pregnancy. So,
Wait, what's
well,
that?
of course.
What's the rhythm method?
Oh, the rhythm method is when you follow
The
like
calendar?
a woman's, yeah. So
Cycle.
that's woman's cycle, menstrual
Yes.
cycle. So you have
Yeah.
a 28-day cycle.
Mhm.
There's certain days that you're the most fertile,
Virgo.
and then when you're not. So for
Okay.
couples that are preventing using that, because maybe their religion doesn't permit the use of birth control of any kind, so they try doing that, and that doesn't always work, right? So it just sort of is now they're going to be in a situation where, let's say they were trying to prevent, and now they
Yeah.
got pregnant, and let's say they emotionally aren't there. I mean, I'm just saying, there's just so much here. Just taking away something safe is not replacing it with an alternative is extremely dangerous. I mean, Elle would need to definitely have counseling. Like, do you have access to resources? Do you have access to a free clinic? They shut down they defunded Planned Parenthood, which was serving so many in certain states once this Roe versus Wade was overturned. And so now we're saying you're on your own. Like, you can't have contraception or access to condoms, access to any kind of quality gynecological care for free if you can't afford it, or if you want it to, just you want to go there. You don't want to go to your gynecologist because maybe they are also your mother's gynecologist or a family friend. I mean, who knows? So that alone is like, great. So now you're just saying, we're not doing anything about, what's going to happen after. We're not providing childcare support, any kind of assistance for postpartum women, nothing to do with work, maternity, but you're going to have this kid. And, then there's pressure to breastfeed. Oh, you didn't breastfeed? Oh, yeah, you fucking suck. No, like,
Yeah.
that's the type of stuff people
But
go
no
into.
pun
Then, were you going to
intended.
require?
But you know what? We're not even
So you're
thinking.
going to require her to breastfeed too? Like, that's
Just when you were speaking, I just thought about something.
control?
When you were speaking,
Yeah.
saying they were taking away all these things that they have accessible at the
At
Parenthood.
Planned Parenthood.
Yeah. Parent,
What were the
parent,
quotations?
Thank you.
blah, 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 parenthood. Woo.
Edit that out.
Yeah, we're not, you know, like I said, we're over here thinking like maybe people start thinking, having a thorough thought, because now it's always past their mind, like, I can take care of this problem. So maybe people, both man and woman, start thinking consciously, really seriously thinking who they lay with, and say, well, because I can end up being with this person or trapped with this person or connected to this person. And maybe they start looking for more partners.
That was one of our callers that said that too.
Okay, see, exactly. Yeah. And maybe they find the right partner instead of branching out, you know, sowing oaks for so long.
Are playing an old man's game. You are speaking from a place of maturity. You are speaking from a place of having raised children,
experience,
and lived life and experience. Yeah. You take yourself back to 18-year-old you.
Oh,
20-year-old you.
14-year-old.
Let's go to JT, right? Let's talk about JT.
Wasn't even thinking about any of that.
In those instances, you knew. Yes. Like, all right, this probably ain't the one.
So let me pose this question.
And you still, I'm pretty sure in some instances, rolled the dice.
He said probably is not the one. And I knew it wasn't the one.
I'm pretty sure your thought at that time wasn't like, oh, I can go get this taken care of. You just,
but it could have been the one.
You just threw it on like pipe dreams and some luck. Like,
Puja,
rolled the dice,
I knew it wasn't the one.
That's what I'm saying. Like that is the perspective of an older individual.
You don't have sex.
So
having sex with her. So that doesn't matter if she was the one or not.
How many times you knew it wasn't the one?
Absolutely, but I'm saying, hey, us as a society, as a culture, will have to adapt to certain things. Like, as far as, remember the 3 strike came out with Bill Clinton? It didn't matter. You had 3 strikes, you were done.
I'm just saying,
the broken window policy, right?
Yeah, but I'm just saying, people
is not weighing the weight of the consequence because they haven't lived it. I think a lot of times
the brain's not developed till 25.
Yeah,
I should say,
parts of your brain that make these choices.
Right.
I should say it's not going to happen to me.
That's what I'm saying.
That's what I should say.
A lot of times you can't truly grasp the weight of a situation,
right,
until you have you're in it, lived it, or you've had a close enough view of it that you're like, nah, exactly, that's not going to be me. And I agree with you. Like, you're saying, like, okay, well, if you know this isn't an option, it's going to change. You really believe a 17-year-old and 18-year-old that's laid up watching Netflix and chilling are like, yo, we don't really have this option anymore.
No, they don't. But you know what happens? The parents have a deeper conversation with them, because now there's no bailout.
It was never about the conversation.
Just showed on this.
But you're thinking that's a whole that's like a different. You're thinking they're going to, right? But maybe if they had initially and said, "Here's some condoms. Here's a safe sex conversation."
Well, that's what I'm saying. Maybe they had that. That's what I'm saying. Maybe they had that conversation. I'm saying maybe they have the birds and bees that used to be the case now, before the kids are discovering it online and social media is what I'm saying.
When we grew up and we became sexually active, was abortion as easily available? Like, had it become the thing that it supposedly has become now? No.
I don't have no clue.
And did you have those conversations?
Yeah, it was accessible.
Did anybody? But I'm saying, like, I guess let me say it, like, I feel like the procedure has become a little more openly accepted versus, if you go back a couple of decades. So all I'm saying is, when you were sexually engaging with the non-ones, was it ever in the back of your mind, like, okay, well, if this pops off, like, I'm going to be able to run down the street and get an abortion?
That was never going to be the case, because you never had the choice.
No,
which is what
you never have the choice as a man.
But the point is,
but I wasn't thinking that though. I wasn't
exactly.
thinking.
That's what I'm saying.
Yes,
and it wasn't as easily accessible then as it is now. So what I'm saying is, by taking it off the table, how does that change anything? Because that wasn't our mindset then, and I don't see how that's going to change the mindset now.
On the sidebar, I had some friends of mine who had that paperwork for an abortion, and they would use it to get money from guys.
Wow.
Are you serious?
Wait, sorry, what was that? Say that again?
That's scary.
Hey, that's a side hustle.
We just heard
Ray said he had
something about JT.
He said he had some friends that had the paperwork for abortion that used to use it to get money for guys,
and they weren't even pregnant.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well,
scary.
Women sell fake pregnancy tests. I don't know, women.
Yeah, that's true. Right. It has a website, right? Yeah, website that did that. That was on some show. Safe or something. I forgot. No, I forgot which. some Netflix thing I saw that was like, wow, people really do this.
Yeah.
Hey, so we want to go to a listener? I mean, a caller?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. So I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
Nah, you're
took us off
good. You're
tangent, but yeah.
good. I just,
Puja,
my
I'm with
whole,
Reg.
my whole point is,
I hope that people will look at this and the consequences that come out of it and take the process seriously. But again, I think that is wishful thinking. And I think wishful thinking without any actual plan in place can only lead to disaster. And so by default, I think I'm an optimist. But in this situation, I just don't see an upside. I just really don't. And it's not because I don't want it to work. I just think when you go into something like, I hope everything works well. When has that ever worked?
No, and I mean, sex is a very primal, primitive human instinct, and to not replace something, which we did actually, we made progress with birth controls being covered. Now, insurance companies weren't, certain employers were like, we don't want to fund contraception through insurance, right? So that was an issue not that long ago. Now that hurdle was crossed. So it's sort of like there are things that were put into place to prevent people from getting to a place of having to get an abortion. I can't imagine, like, I personally have not had to be in that position, but I can't imagine, having to be woman for sure. If you're young, scared, you don't have any support, men too. I mean, I think it affects you guys. I know that, like, that's, let's say you don't have a relationship, but you have like a not time without not the one. Now, if she decides to have the child, right, because you're not the one, your heart may say that, but your body doesn't know the difference. And
That's
so
right.
you could, right? So, like, let's say you have a kid. I mean, now you're going to be paying child support.
Yep.
And if you don't, guess what? Your wages will be garnished in court.
That's right.
You risk
going to jail probably.
it's just it's
Losing
a
your
lot.
license.
Yeah, it will affect you. You
Not
could
only
be
affects you
stuck in-
financially, it also affects the relationship you have with that
Emotionally.
child.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And the child.
exactly, and then and then what
and
kind
then
of
it affects,
what
and it affects
the
the
attachment
kids'
will they have?
future.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm saying. When you say guys don't, it's like guys have a bigger thing than anyone realizes. I understand women has a
No,
bigger,
I think they do.
they do. Like, let's say, for
think they
instance, if
do.
you don't do whatever, they're sending you to jail. No matter if you're good, it doesn't matter if this person has used your kid as a
Pawn. Let's
in this Ponzi scheme. Because let's be real, a lot of this,
Ponzi scheme?
Ponzi schemes. I'm talking about what it's. Wait, when people like celebrities and stuff like that. I'm talking about celebrities. I'm talking about celebrities and basketball players. When you have these people doing that,
in years.
You see little Johnny here? He's in a Ponzi scheme.
Right.
I was just mixing my A's with B's. Okay, I was thinking about pro ball players and not regular dudes. But
well, like Kanye's song. What was? I don't want to bring him up, but Gold Digger was about that one.
Right.
yeah, exactly, absolutely. And when you were saying the not the one. Jeff was telling. We were talking about the not today pill. What was it that they're making for men? The birth control pill they're making for men. Not today.
Like, not today. Right. That's what we're gonna call
That
it.
is so catchy.
I know. I just want to let you know I'm late. Not today.
Today, I've been taking mine, girl.
Right. I've been on it every day, twice a day.
Like, yo,
Sorry.
If you're not sure if you're
man.
you don't want to have kids.
Exactly.
Put a condom on it before you even leave the house. If
That would be
you don't think you can
oh,
control yourself
exactly.
in the moment. Same goes women. There's other alternatives. All jokes aside,
dudes take their multivitamins every day. That's all I'm saying.
You just added into
Every
the sequence
day.
of things.
A day.
Push, I got one thing for you, right?
A
I'm
day.
trying to marry, like the feeling, like, trying to be mindful of women's choice as well as the involvement of, like, the potential fathers in this situation. As a female, would you be opposed if they were to revisit this decision and say, okay, look, here's what we're going to do, right? We're going to reverse the initial decision. And instead, what we're going to implement is, what if with every abortion, you have to undergo some form of class or a certain amount of hours. And this is going to sound so ugly, but I can't think of a better way to put it. So, like, when you get when you get a ticket, right?
Counseling?
You have the option to go to
fine,
school.
remember
And you have
finding.
to, right? You go to class.
Yeah.
It potentially stops points from going on your license. Your license.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
learn a couple of things on how
Get
to
an abortion license.
move a little different in the future, right? So,
Yeah.
Did you just say
What
an
about?
abortion license?
Yeah, I'm not listening to him. What about like
No, I hear
something
what you're saying.
similar
Like a,
along the lines of like, okay, well, you
right.
can do this, but we require you to maybe undergo a class,
yeah.
and just the class can be covering, your well being and contraception and options available to you, different programs. Like, would that feel like too
Yeah.
invasive as far as like a female in that situation looking to go that route?
Before you answer that,
For some, yes.
you
What's
can
that
either
last? This is the
the,
reason
the
women
one
need to have the right
the,
to choose
yeah,
because we
exactly.
get things.
The ones though,
This
like
is
the
what we
ones that are
get.
just frequent, they have a commercial license.
You know what? Don't listen.
That's what I mean.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Jack, you have a really good.
Hold on,
You
I need
gotta
this
lighten it
one.
up. You gotta lighten
All right,
I'm
yeah,
done.
I'm sorry.
I was so just took
it up.
drop.
I'm sorry.
Are you done?
Just took a drop. Oh my gosh.
No, but
That's serious.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It's Bro-RantZ. All right, go ahead, Puja. I'm sorry.
no,
Go
I
with your
know, I
thoughts.
know. But you guys just made my point about why I believe it should be in the woman's hand to decide.
Wow.
He just said a
Because-
commercial.
No, we were just kidding.
I
No.
know you were, but I'm kidding too. You know?
No, you should not kid on
Oh,
that.
this is
A
funny. That was
commercial
funny.
license.
You know what? No, no. You know what?
I'm just saying.
No, but that was that was nice. Puja got us back. That was good. Well played. Yes, well played.
Well played.
Yeah, we'll leave you to it. I'm sorry.
Oh my
No.
goodness.
I think no, but you gotta add some humor into this, right? Like, I
Absolutely.
mean, it is. I have seen some things I can't talk about, but yes, um, and yeah, like I don't want to have to work with another child that is named by the order they were born in because that,
Mhm.
you know, or yes, I have seen this. I have been there. It's just hard, and you know, do I think the kids or how about this then, right? There's families who have kids, and then the children, financial, let's say they're fine, they're married, but their child has a genetic condition that should they have another, they could have another child with the same condition. Some people risk it, and they can. I have personally worked with a child who had siblings, and they all had like several conditions. But after the first child was born, the mom was genetically advised through a counselor, genetic counseling,
Yeah.
this will happen in this much percentage.
Yeah.
Oh my
And
gosh.
second child, third child, fourth child, and this child was highly special needs. There was just a lot of
Oh.
care that was not being, you know, attention that was not there because she was also working, but she was single, and so she didn't have the support, but yet she had this information. So it's like,
Yeah.
how
Exactly.
then you're
Yeah.
looking at a country like China, you can have one child, that's it, or you
Yeah.
know, it just it. But I think you know, I think for women, either road, like before you become parent, like before I gave birth, we went through parenting classes. Which, by the way, I was disappointed because I had never changed a diaper in my life, and I thought it was going to be about like that stuff, what to expect when the baby's born.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let me tell you,
Yeah.
most of it was about how to do natural childbirth,
Yeah.
Yep.
about
That's
like
what it is.
how to do breathing.
Yeah, it was
At one point,
disappointing. Yeah.
at one point I was like, what percentage of women here actually take epidural? And the lady was like 95%. I'm like, so why are we talking about natural birthing
Right.
techniques when
Exactly.
like 95% aren't going to be able to get out of bed to do this?
Yeah.
You know, I want to know what to do after, and that's hard. I mean, it's so something like that maybe, right? People can have access to counseling, like what,
Yeah.
and I think Planned Parenthood, and there are programs. So if you go there, they do. Um, I actually had interviewed years ago at this way early on in my career. It was a clinic actually in Long Island City. I don't remember the name, but it offered abortion as a service. And part of the interview was that you had to like go in and do like a working interview, because they said sometimes women might request their counselor or their therapist to go with them into the procedure room,
Mhm.
and they're not all under anesthesia. As it was explained to me, that it was a quicker thing. Some women weren't under anesthesia, so they wanted that support. And so they did have a full, you know, from regular care, counseling to decision. There were couples that would come in because they're like, we have too many boys. We want a girl, or else we want abortion, or we have too many girls. And
Wow.
that, you know, people were starting to use it for those things, to which again, there's so much here, but
Yeah, but that's not like a
I
pair of jeans. That's like a
remember,
pair of jeans.
Yeah, it's like
I don't want those.
yeah, no,
I don't want the dark jeans. I
yeah.
want the.
Yeah, it was, but there were also a lot of young kids, and people were throwing eggs on the doctors and nurses. They're like, "How comfortable are you with being heckled at?" I'm like, "What? How comfortable are you being like assaulted?" I'm like, "Excuse me, not very comfortable, right?" Like, I mean, I
Yeah.
don't want to be assaulted for
Right.
going in to provide a service that I think everyone has a right to access. But that was the type of stuff that this was maybe 12 years ago in New
Wow.
York. So um, I can only imagine what it's like in other states where people have actually killed doctors who perform these
Right.
things. And I remember going, and I had never, the idea of like they started. So to speak to your point, Jeff, they did start with like a counseling sort of intake, and then you would work with the person seeking services, and then identify sort of resources, help them really be sure before moving forward, or help them think about what other alternatives there are.
but
Um,
do you feel
all the
like
way through
that's
like groups
intrusive?
afterwards. No, I think if you request it, again, it has to be voluntary. If I go in and I say, hey, I want this appointment, like if they, I think they should offer, hey, do you need someone to speak with? And if they say no, I'm good, then I think
Okay.
that should be respected. And if they want to, I absolutely think it should be offered. And there's also groups for women who
Yeah.
have it, like for women who've had abortion or multiple, let's say for many reasons, support groups continuing onwards after the procedures and things, because it's not a simple decision. It's not, you just go in there, you kind of just, scoop it out, and then it's not. It's got a lot of implications there, and it's just, it's unfortunate. Yes, for some women that becomes a thing, but then there are 16-year-old, 17-year-old girls giving birth in bathroom stalls during prom. Do we want that?
Wow.
Yeah, you haven't heard those stories? Oh my
I
gosh,
mean, it was a long.
there's a
I don't know if
few.
it's is that still happening.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm sure more. I mean, now what they started doing was doing the safe haven programs where
Okay.
people could leave the baby outside of a fire station or
Yeah.
police without
Yeah.
judgment or any legal
Yeah.
consequence. And so that I think prevented um, a lot of this from happening. So that's what I'm saying. If you put in supports to help
Yeah.
people, maybe then you can prevent that, as well as beef up supports on the other end. If you're going to say you can't get an abortion, well, then you got to beef up supports for people who are going to need
Absolutely.
childcare, who are going to need money to help them raise these children, right? Especially if they're doing it alone, because it's expensive. It is emotionally exhausting. And I can't say it again. I
Yeah.
mean, I can't say enough times. Having the baby, like being pregnant was a breeze for me. Labor, delivery, I mean, I had, it was fine. What came next was hard as fuck, and it still is, and it's gonna keep, there's no way around it. That
This
was the
girl
hard
acted
part. I
like she
mean, weird
had
to think
the
of it.
omen. She like she had the omen.
Oh,
I'm just
What
saying
came
I'm
after
a
stuff.
was
5-year-old.
terrible.
You
You don't
don't know.
understand.
No, that's where the
He
real work.
breathed fire.
That's where the real work kicks
But
in. I agree
those
with you.
those commercials where the
Yeah.
baby's like cutely sitting in those things and all quiet. No,
Yeah.
they're lying. They all lie to you.
Big
It is
lies.
not
Yo,
that way.
exactly, yo. I know Raymond wanted
you
to
got
touch
the-
on the
you got the-
video.
But
I
let's
mean, the
do the
video
call.
wanted to
Oh,
play
yeah.
the message for you. I just have one
Yeah.
more question before that. So you, with Jeff's intake, you think they should get commercial licenses or no? I'm just kidding. Go ahead, Ray, play.
I
Ray,
think
play.
we should
No,
take
don't answer that. Don't
your
answer that.
I'm gonna.
voting license away. No, kidding.
I'm,
Just kidding.
All right. Let me play one of
I'm
these.
joking.
Let's see.
As a 20-year-old college student, I found myself having to make the life-altering decision of whether or not to keep my child. Ultimately, I terminated my pregnancy. I was in no way prepared to bring a child into this world. Believe me, there has not been a day since then that I have not thought about how differently my life would be or what that child would be like. 10 years later, I gave birth to my beautiful daughter, and she has truly been a blessing and the best thing that has ever happened to me. As an educated woman, I understand the recent ruling is giving the ultimate say to the states. However, when access to safe legal abortions is taken away, it causes a dangerous situation. I also believe that completely banning abortion without regard or allowing exceptions to instances of rape, incest, or if the mother's life is in danger is not good either. Ultimately, I believe the choice should be up to the woman that is either going to have to live with this decision, whether she keeps the child or whether she decides to terminate her pregnancy. It should be her decision.
Felt the emotion in that one.
Well, she did both. Yeah.
Was that the only mess?
Well, he has another one.
I have the follow up to where there was a previous caller and she called in and she just wanted to say that women should be able to talk about it if they had an abortion. They shouldn't be silent about it. And he said, and she also said that if they want to shout it from the rooftops or from the mountaintops, they should be able to without being judged. And then Reggie,
I said I think they do. I mean, I don't think there's any shame in it these days. That's what I said. Back in the day, it had a taboo to it, but these days they don't look at it like that.
I mean, you didn't understand what she meant.
I didn't understand because I was like, because they do now shout it. They do say like casually, like it could be say nonchalant. Like it's not like before it was like, okay, that's something you kept in the closet, you kept, no one knew, or you got with someone and you're like, your husband, you're like, I had this X amount of years ago, and you let them know. But now it's like, I think it's freely because it's empowering. I don't know. It's, but the way she said it, I was confused the way she said it. I was like, they shout it out now.
So she did a follow up to clarify any kind of confusion in what she said. So
wait. Mm-hmm. To go back to their, because I know you deal with people, women that have the procedure like this. The young lady or the woman just called and left a message. Is there a lot of emotional trauma from doing this?
Yeah. I mean, I didn't actually end up working with the clinic for a couple of the reasons, but I
just
had a
clients
different
that you meet.
job
Yeah,
that
just
aligned.
clients that you have.
But yes, I absolutely think
Yeah.
there is. I don't think it's an easy decision. I don't think it's like a high five, I just got my abortion, girl, you're next. Like that's just not how it goes.
Yeah.
And I think it's not. I think there is a lot of guilt, a lot of shame. Some women are prone to develop PTSD from it. It is a traumatic event, especially if it was, just a tragic, rape or some sort of pregnancy they didn't consent to.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, there is such a thing as, there's different ways of abuse in relationships and multiple ways. If a woman finds herself in that and then gets that abortion, absolutely. There's, or without the abuse, it is significantly traumatic. I think it takes a lot on your body.
Yeah.
It's not something I think people are like proud of. I think it's a part of their story, and they're like, this is a part of my story. This was my choice. This is my decision. And I feel like I want to talk about it because it's one part of the dialogue, right? Like, this is what happened to me. This is my voice, my story. And I think it's more about that and sort of just sharing what it feels like. I can't imagine anyone who's had to have multiple abortions feels good about it. And I think that's where the whole thing about where it's a woman's choice ultimately should come in is it's very easy, I think, to say, you know what, I'm going to take care of this child. You can have the baby, give him to me. We're assuming the woman's not going to have any emotional attachment at that point. She may, because once you go through, and maybe she may. So it's not that you're saying I don't have any motherly instincts necessarily. It just could be the circumstances weren't right. And that is, yes, there's more trauma from, there's guilt, that shame, that sense of, I don't think I've ever heard a man ever say like, hey, when I was 18, my girlfriend got pregnant and we had an abortion, or any stories like that, really.
Well, I was
So
curious
I think,
about that, right? I was curious
shame
about
and
that.
guilt.
Like, do you two know anyone outside of like immediate family, like any female friends that have openly had that conversation with you or told you that?
Yes.
It's been a long
male
time.
or female? Because
You
do you guys have friends that have?
Like there was a
no, I
female
meant
that you
both.
knew that shared shared that with you. Just like, hey, well, I've
Both.
had a procedure.
I know guys who've gone with girls to get abortions at a younger and older, and girls. Yes.
Well, how
I can only think of like one or two. So that's why I was like, I don't think anybody wears it as a badge of courage. I know quite a
No.
few people. You know, it's not like, oh, I'm going to let the world know, because
Yeah.
at the most I can think of maybe one person off the top of my head that, you know, we were having a conversation and that information was shared with me. And I know as far as the circle that I run in, maybe there's more people that you know, have either faced that decision or made that decision. But like you said, I don't think it's something that anyone is proud of or like quick to talk about.
Yeah, Ray, let me
Right,
pose a
because
question
a lot
to
of people
you.
have to consider the
I
alternative outcomes and impacts on their life,
Yeah.
right? When you're making a decision, you're thinking, okay, if I have this child, can I provide for my child? Can I, if I'm
Yeah,
single, if
exactly.
this man chooses that he doesn't want anything to do with it, um, this baby, is there going to be, you know, am I going to be able to sufficiently provide? Do I have support? Do I have people I can count on? It
Absolutely.
really does take a village. So not an easy thing. And I know that there's also research to say that if you prevent access, it's not going to, um, in any case, like make it better. That's actually worse for mental health. And there's, as opposed to, I think somebody had asked, like, if women, is the mental health consequences worse if you have an abortion, or if you were to access, limit access to it. I think
Yeah.
initially we'd kind of talked about it, was on the media. And I mean, so far the research is like, if you, anytime you take away a right from someone to do something, you're going to find more dangerous ways to do it, which is unhealthy, leading to more stressful. You know, they might never be able to conceive if they go through a back alley illegal operation that could leave them, you know, hemorrhaging out, or, you know, having such poor healing that they may never be able to conceive when they want to. So these are things, it shouldn't be looked at as like it's a punishment or a reinforcement of any kind. It's a societal thing. It's a natural thing, and we got to think about what are we really putting at force here? I mean, at stake here. And I think you can't force anyone to have a child. And if a woman ultimately is going to carry that child and have that baby, like, it should be with consideration to her partner. But if you're looking at, you know, immature, our brains don't develop fully till we're 25. And so now if you throw in people that may have ADHD, any kind of neurodivergent or neurological characteristics or disorders, neurological disorders, you're looking at plus or minus 3 to 5 years. So a 20-year-old male may act like a 15-year-old at 20 if they have, you know, any kind of neurological impairments like that. So we make some of our biggest decisions in life before our brain, the part of our brain that actually can help you rationalize and reason your choices, think far ahead enough beyond the immediate gratification in the moment, does not develop until you're 25. And that's the average. So you're looking at some that develop later, some, you know, much later, or a little bit earlier. But these
Yeah,
things are,
but
like, you know, Jeff was saying, you're not thinking about it.
yeah, but let's say,
You
for
know?
instance, same thing you're posing right there as far as 20, whatever. If a person that's 20 commits a crime, and I know you're gonna say it's not a crime, but I'm just talking about as far as your actions, consequences, going with that, leading with that. They don't care if the law does not care if they're mentally developed. All they care about is the action. So just saying that, you know, so
No,
you
but
know,
they
it's good
do.
for
They
this.
do. You, if you kept writing checks because you have
Well, I'm talking about like
you
robbing a
know,
bank. I'm
insanity
talking
or
about
some sort of
killing
mental health
someone.
concern,
It's
they would
like,
be
oh,
taken into
well, he's
consideration.
immature. You know, I'm just saying as far as serious crimes or whatnot. But I'm just talking about action and consequences. But Ray, I know you have another.
So it's 8:47. Do we have time for one
Yeah.
more? So what you want
Sure.
to? Okay, this will be real quick.
Yeah.
This is
No,
the
no problem.
follow up to clarification.
Hi, this is Carolyn again, and I wanted to follow up on my message that I recorded for y'all last week for your podcast discussing the Roe versus Wade decision. Wanted to clarify that when I was talking about women not feeling shame about but really it was about not feeling shame about your body at all and anything that happens to a woman's body. But particularly with abortions, I think that women being silent is what's so dangerous and destructive to women's mental and physical health. And so the opposite of silence would be to shout something from the mountaintop. And it would certainly not be to celebrate an abortion. I can't speak for all women, but I don't think that a woman necessarily feels like an abortion is a pleasant experience. But at the same time,
not to celebrate, but to be silent. The opposite of being silent would be to scream about your feelings out loud and to not feel shame. So just want to clarify that that's what I meant when I talked about shouting from the mountaintops. I think that too often in society, we silence each other's feelings and emotions, and particularly women are silenced in many spaces in society and political realms. And so I hope that helps to enlighten you guys about my message last week. Thanks so much for the opportunity to come on here and talk to everybody and your audience.
Oh, you're very welcome. Caroline, right?
I'm with it.
Caroline.
Anti-silence, girl.
No.
Anti-silence.
No,
She said enlighten for the enlightened therapist. How about that?
I know, right?
Oh,
How about
Oh,
oh, nice. I was gonna say too, but let me address her real quickly. You see if Puja backs me up. I think it's a generational thing. I think she's speaking from she's older, right?
Was older.
Well, she's within our age range. She's an older woman. She's not.
She's younger than us. But yeah.
so I guess
She's
what,
like
30s,
what is she in?
40s,
She's
30s, 40s,
early
without-
40s.
Okay, so it's generational. I'm saying it's a generational thing. Like that generation, yeah, it was silence. It was something you kept under the rug. This generation now, with what, let's say the last 10 years, people have been vocal about it.
What are you basing that on? Because you feel very strong about that. But what are you
Because
basing
I'm just
that
saying,
on?
as far as man, I just feel like.
There's a difference between
Because when I feel
feeling
like
and
okay,
knowing, right?
so let's
Like,
say for
that's what I'm
instance,
asking, like,
if you listen to the podcast and he has Ray has a taped, we had someone call in. She happened to be a social worker, and she was saying that these teenagers were casually. She would come, and one teenager will casually say she had an abortion, and then she'd come back a couple of months later. She had another one, and it was just like
But
it
that
was
was her
no
role
shame.
at that center. It wasn't
No,
like
but
a
it was like
random
there was
person off the street. That's what she's there for.
No, but it was like there was
was
no
that
shame.
yeah? Was that
there
their
was no
setting that she worked in?
So
Or was it a school setting?
social worker. I don't know.
She dealt with a lot of young teens who were probably poverty in poverty-stricken areas, and so they were. And the person we're talking about, the social worker, if you talk to her, she's very disalarming. Where if you talk to her, you feel like she makes you feel like your family, like, and so you'll open up to her more than you would other people because she has that sort of personality, and she make the relationship just feel like it's normal. So
like you guys known each other for years, right?
yeah,
she's one of those folks.
She has that.
That's
She has
great.
that skill, that tact. So
I just think
That's
people since Facebook and whatnot, social media are very open about everything. They're very open about their damages, about about their bads or goods, and that's what I'm saying. I don't. The teenagers are
agree
very
with you.
vulgar. They'll say whatever's on their mind without a filter.
I agree with you. I'm just saying I'm on
that's what I-
Instagram,
that's what I mean by that.
Snapchat, and IG, and I haven't seen anyone on there broadcasting like their procedure history, like ever.
we got 9 minutes, Puja. I don't want to
Right.
delay, mess up your other time.
I have a
very
9
respectful to your
o'clock, or
time.
else I would stay on. I do. I would. I booked
gotta
the
go.
No, we
9
know you gotta
PM.
go, but we
Thank you
thank
so much,
Um,
Puja.
No, I think to say to that point, I think it's more about just validation and feeling that it's okay. It's like destigmatizing mental health, right? Until like we were okay with saying, I am not okay.
Mhm.
It was like people weren't supportive of that. Now there's this movement to say, hey, it's okay not to be okay. It's okay to say I'm struggling. I need help. And I think it's just normalizing something that is a part of some people's life. It may not be good or bad. It just is, sometimes things in life just are, they can be bad, yet, a fact, or something that could be dealt with, with struggle, yet with hope. So I think that there's a little bit more gray when it comes to this. It's not so, I think, clear cut on one end of the spectrum, but I think it's more about just normalizing, it's not getting validation to destigmatize it. Gotcha. And to sort of not make the word abortion such a big deal that if it were to come up, it's such an issue, because that is what prevents people from seeking birth control. Like, oh my God, if you're having birth control, that means you're having sex. So then people stop buying condoms.
The same
or
thing
stop,
with condoms, right? Yeah, like,
control.
I don't want to go in and ask for it because then there's somebody else.
Right.
Right, yeah.
Right. What movie was that? Where, I don't remember, but just to lighten this up a little bit, the guy goes in and he buys like the XXL magnums, and the cashier's like, that's not you.
Right.
I forgot what movie this is. I can't remember.
Oh gosh. But
Got it. Yeah.
thank you so
So
much for your time. And I want one thing before you leave, girl. You have the.
yeah.
This is off topic, but no, you have the awesome setup.
Looks good.
You need to be damn doing some
Thank
damn YouTube or
you.
I know
Instagram
it looks
like
good. Looks good.
no, I'm serious because the background is
Thank you.
awesome. You should be doing like
You
even if
saw
it's
her teleport to fix the shelf.
I
in the
know.
back, right? Like one moment she was there, the next moment we just saw you in the back fixing. It was like,
I,
oh, wow.
I was trying to like display my books, and like,
Yeah.
but then I just was like, my face was blocking it. But
no,
like,
but
know,
seriously, even if it's like
thank
5 minute
you.
segments, 10-minute segments on YouTube, on Instagram or
Yeah.
something, you should be done. You got the
Yeah.
perfect setup.
You know, I was
Perfect
thinking,
setup.
Thank
Rich, we
you.
all